Hi everyone. I sort of wanted to wait to film this video when I got my ring light, which was supposed to be delivered yesterday, but Amazon said it was delivered and it wasn't. So there's a mystery that needs to be solved. And I've been sitting on the script for a few days, and I figure I can go ahead and film the intro video and start editing this intro video to my new and first series that I am titling Fairly Historical. I'm actually going to be reading from a script, so please, it's like reading off a teleprompter. In this series, I'm going to show you how to process my process for taking a modern commercial pattern and hacking it to create a piece of historical clothing. Why am I making this video? Well, or this series? Well, because I know a lot of folks who are interested in doing historical costuming and don't know where to start. There are many amazing costumers out there who show their process of using historical techniques, making lovely, sophisticated, complicated items of clothing that are enviable, but not really feasible for someone who is just starting out on either their sewing or historical costuming clothing journey. So what I'm going to do in this is First note, most commercial pattern companies are partnering with some of those amazing costumers right now. So Simplicity has started partnering with American Duchess, and McCall's has started partnering with Angela Clayton. And these patterns are really, really great because the costumers themselves do a lot of amazing research for their patterns that they create. So they combine the expertise of the clothing historians and clothing makers of American Duchess and Angela Clayton with the ease of a one-packet pattern. So all of the pattern pieces are there, tell you how to cut it out, they tell you how to sew it together. Really great idea. Each company has between, I think, 4 and 8 patterns with their pattern collabs with either American Duchess or Angela Clayton. And I'll put information in the description below, links to the McCalls and to the Simplicity websites where you can find those patterns. So if you're looking to make a particular pattern, I think American Duchess does a lot of stuff that's like 18th, 19th century stuff. Angela Clayton has everything, I think, ranging from a 14th century gown up to a 19th century. So if you're looking for something kind of in there, great place to start. And hopefully you can find something that'll be really easy for you to use if that's something that you're looking for. But if you are looking to make an item that those patterns won't help you with because they don't have something, stay tuned. I'm going to show you my process for taking a modern historical pattern and where I start and where I end. And again, this is just the first video, so here we go. In this first video, I'm going to talk about how I chose the piece of clothing that I'm going to make, how I picked the fabric and the pattern that I'm going to hack. The next videos after this will be me cutting out the pattern and hacking the pattern itself, cutting out the fabric, sewing the pieces together, and talking about why I'm doing what I'm doing for each particular thing. Then I'll show you the finished product. Yay! To start off, I want to tell you all my mindset while creating historical clothing. I kind of go into this creating historical clothing. I don't think radically different than a lot of people who make historical clothing, but I don't hear a lot of people talk about this particular mindset. I've been sewing since I was 8 years old and attending Renaissance fairs, medieval fairs since I was 14, my freshman year of high school, and I have worn garb to each and every single one of them that I've been to. So that's all 4 years of high school, 2 or 3 years of college, and almost every year since I've graduated from college. So it's a lot of clothing that has come and gone. As I got older and I studied more history, I was a history major in college, studying ancient history and classical civilization, and then mostly like Northern European Renaissance specifically. I studied more history. My garb got more and more accurate while never being too complicated. I do not enjoy making and wearing extraordinarily elaborate dresses. Again, going back to my mindset of when I do historical costuming, I like to imagine myself being one of my ancestors. My ancestors were never rich people. My ancestors were working class or below, and I'm very proud of that. My body, well, let me tell you, boy howdy does my body represent that peasant working class. I'm short, but I'm muscular AF, and I've got the padding. So I like to create clothes that quote-unquote ordinary people would wear. So I very rarely use silks or satins. I mostly stay in the linen, wool, cotton area of things, which we'll get to talking about more when I talk about fabric. I very rarely do elaborate beading and elaborate pleating, and I don't do these huge gowns that require lots of stuff that I'm going to talk about later. It's what I like to wear. It's the type, every time I go to a fair, even if I am not acting in said fair, I like to have a character that I am portraying. This last year, I will show you a picture, I believe either in the comments or I'll try to put it in here, of I made a mostly historical kirtle. The color choices and the fabric choices, I made it mostly out of cotton because it's cheaper. But I also made it a blue chemise, a red underskirt, a purple kirtle, and then a yellow, orange, and green apron. If you put all those colors together, that would be the colors of the rainbow. So I call it my queer Renaissance dress. And Sekhmet is coming over. Here she comes. Yay, Sekhmet. So, are you done? Or are you going to keep hitting me in the face with your tail? Okay. Well, I have a guest. She helps sometimes. There she is. She helps me sometimes with my sewing, and by helps I mean she sits on the fabric that I'm trying to keep nice and straight and kind of bats it around. So if you have some sort of small pet that is out free roaming and you are sewing or doing some sort of crafting, I'm very certain you understand. So going back to the type of clothing that I like to wear, this particular item that I made, or this set of items that I made, I was making for a character that I decided was a dyer of clothing. So that's one reason why she had such bright, actually it's jewel tones. That's why she was able to have such a variety of color in her clothing. And wore my hair in a turban, really great. It's one of my favorite outfits I've ever worn. So this is kind of emulating that, kind of going back to that 16th century kirtle. So where was I in my script? I acted at a medieval fair for 2 years, and I continue to do 19th century reenactment at Pioneer Farms here in Austin. So that's when, again, this is being filmed in July of 2020 when we are in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis and we are in effective lockdown and quarantine. So people are wearing masks, people are staying home. Pioneer Farms is open for business. If you want to go, you cannot do guided tours at this moment, but you can go on self-guided tours and go do like basically nature walks. So I think they're doing social distancing things where if you that's like dances. So like the band will play and then you can only dance with the partner you come with because they assume that you're in your quarantine bubble with them, and then you can like stay 6 feet apart from everybody else. So anyway, that's neither here nor there on this particular video. Let's see. Each time I make an outfit for these ventures that I'm doing, either ritual reenactment or going to fair, I think about what would the person wearing this have done? What would they use? What would they, why would they use it? And what would they do if they had what we have now? I can tell you that my ancestors would flip for electronic sewing machines. And if you don't think so, you were probably wrong, because hand sewing, while it can be very meditative, can also be a pain in the butt. And if you could finish a garment in 2 days as opposed to 2 months, well, boy howdy, they probably would have loved it. And they also would have loved like 45, even 45-inch fabric, because fabric historically was much, much smaller because it was woven by hand. So you didn't want to have these big machine milled and big machine woven fabric bolts. So, 45-inch fabric. Great. And fabric stores, are you kidding? What a luxury. You don't have to just go get the 1 or 2 colors of linen and maybe dye it yourself, or wool, and you stick with what you've got. Fabric stores, are you crazy? Like super, super luxurious. So having that in mind, I don't hold myself to strict standards for only using historical techniques and historical looking results. What this means is the outfit that I'm going to be making today is going to be based on a 16th century, mid-16th century kirtle pattern. Generally during this time, this would have been based on a Northwestern European aesthetic. England, France, Germany, Poland, the lowlands, the Low Countries. The fabrics probably used at that time, wool and linen. Cotton was a thing. It was definitely a thing. But it was more expensive because it had to come from the Mediterranean or elsewhere. But I live in Texas, and cotton's very easy to get a hold of. Also, I live in Texas, so, haha, wool, no. Which is what I will talk about later when we talk about fabric choices. So my process combines both using modern tools and tricks with more historical methods to really recreate a historical looking garment or historical garment. Things I considered when choosing what I was going to make this time. First one, shape. I cannot read my own handwriting, you guys. Silhouettes. That's what that says. It says silhouettes. Have shifted from slim fit to mini folds to nipped in waist to extravagant sleeves and large bums and everything in between and back and forth all over the place. So you go from a Greek Roman chiton or peplops, and then you go into a, high to late medieval, looking at my cat, she's just rolling around on the table, high to late medieval blouts and anything in between, going into these like mid 19th century antebellum huge crinolines and hoop skirts and all that stuff. So thinking that in mind, considering my body shape, which I am short, pleasantly plump, and rather muscular, I have decided to stay away from styles that have little to no shaping in them and that make my already squat and sort of square frame look even squatter. So that means no Greek chitons, no Roman peplops, or late or high medieval coats, surcoats, or blouts. They have little to no shaping in them. They do have waists, but I also have larger breasts, and it gets weird. So I want something that emphasizes my breasts, kind of nips my waist in a little bit, emphasizes that I have one, and gives me the look and or illusion of having hips and a bum. I'm fairly top heavy. I have larger breasts and I have rather large shoulders, and I have what one could politely call white girl butt. So I don't have many very big hips or very big butt, so I like to make the illusion of an hourglass shape. So keeping this in mind, I'm going to go Renaissance or later because generally that's the time period that creates the silhouette that I'm looking for. Now the next thing I think of, underthings. Do I want to make or wear complicated underthings? Thinking about, aka, do I want to make stays, or a corset, or a farthingale, or a crinoline, or a bum roll, or a bum pad, or a bustle? For this project, nah, not really. I don't. I would like to keep this as simple as possible. So I usually make, like I said, make clothing for working people, but even if you're making something for like a 19th or 18th century dairy maid, if you want to get an accurate shape, you would have to have some sort of stay underneath. Corsets really weren't a thing yet. Corsets weren't a thing until like the 19th century, but we can talk about it in another video where I can just like expound on stays and corsets and how people get them wrong. So I think I'm going to stick before the 17th century, and so I want minimal fuss. I shall try to attempt a 16th century Renaissance outfit. Side note, as someone of Northern European descent, I feel most comfortable making and wearing clothing from this area. So that would be, like I said before, the British Isles, Germany, the Low Countries, France, and so forth. Or Prussia. This, I did 23andMe. This is where I know my ancestry comes from. I got the DNA to prove it. So these areas are what I have studied the most, and they're what I, when exploring and wearing these clothes, I feel like I am not appropriating a culture that is not my own. Even going so far as to do Southern European, Mediterranean, Spanish, or Italian, or Greek clothing, especially going in, as you go farther east, going into Middle Eastern, South Asian, East Asian, the steppes. While these clothes are beautiful and amazing, follow the people who make them, who are of that descent. I'm white and European, and while I could talk about those things, it's not my place to do so. So, keeping that in mind, that's another reason why this might seem super Eurocentric. It's because that's my heritage. That's where I'm coming from, and that's what I feel comfortable making. And if you want to find some reenactors or costumers that you do more... Ooh, my camera is slipping from one side to the other. That do more... Middle Eastern or East Asian or Southeast Asian or African or Native American First Nations, find them. I'll try to find them and put some links in the description, because support the creators who are telling you about their own history. They are always going to be better at it than white folks. Sorry other white people, but yeah, we're colonizers, and we gotta stay in our lane sometimes. Also, I'm queer, and if you aren't aware of that, here's my Bi Pride flag. Here you go. I have got my Bi Pride, got some scrunchies in my hair, trying for a mid-early 90s look. So, also, I'm queer, so if you're not a fan of that, bye! Alright, so we've talked about, like, some important stuff about consent and diversity and supporting diverse creators and such. So, talked about that. Here we go. So, now it's time for research. I did my research. I looked in historical clothing books that I own. Plus, of course, I searched on the internet. I searched for working class images of working class folks in the time period that I'm looking for. There's one image that I will try to embed into the video. We're going to try to do this corner thing, or like, again, I'm super new to this, so we'll find out. But if I can't figure out how to do it, I'll either put it in the comments, but I'm at least going to tell you what it looks like, what it is. And it's called, Peter Arsten's The Cook from 1559. This pretty much is what I'm looking for. It is a femme person. I'm assuming we use she, her pronouns for this person. Wearing a chemise or shift. And on top of that, she has a over kirtle or gown. It is basically what I'm looking for. This particular image, though, her kirtle hits below the bust, not above the bust. I want a little bit more support than that, so as I start hacking and going into the pattern, I'm going to keep that in mind. So, this is exactly kind of what I'm looking for. It's a plain undergarment, one outer dress, and an apron. It's perfect. Just absolutely what is simple, awesome, working class folks. I will use this as an inspiration for the outfit. This outer dress item is frequently known as a kirtle in the 15th and 16th centuries. Kirtles before that, if you look up like Renaissance kirtle versus medieval kirtle, you'll get two different images. So have fun with that, everybody. If you're just starting out your historical clothing journey, oh boy, does it get wild. So I have this book called Historical Clothing and Historic Costumes and How to Make Them. It's one of, oh, you can't really see that because of the light. Historical Costumes and How to Make Them. Oh, that's a lot better. It starts at the beginning. It gives you information on the different types of historical costumes, and the back has patterns that you can draft. Side note, one reason why I'm doing this, I am not great at drafting. This is not a secret. I'm not great at it. I'm great at the actual sewing. I'm great at cutting. Drafting, not my jam. So I often use commercial patterns as a base and then like draw from there, because if I can find a pattern that sort of matches what comes in here, and then I can just kind of nip and tuck and draw a little bit extra, it's perfect for me. So I looked through here and I found a simple pattern for a 16th century kirtle. I'm going to open it up and try to see if you can see it. This is what they call a Tudor woman's gown. It is on starting on page 100 and 101 if you have this particular book. And it gives you the scales in here, scale of 1/8 of an inch, size pattern 5 foot 6 inches. I am not 5 foot 6 inches. I am 5 foot even. Size chest, 36 inches. Much smaller than my actual chest. That would definitely be something I'd have to scale around. So the images that I am most interested in right now are the images of the bodice, the back piece, and which way does my finger need to go? The front piece. These are the two things that I'm interested in right now. The skirt pieces, that is part of the skirt, part of the skirt. Not quite as interested in, and I will explain why later. So I found kind of what I'm going for in this particular pattern book. going back to the script so I don't forget what I'm talking about. Taking the images, this pattern, I search for modern commercial pattern sites for a pattern that kind of matches these bodice pieces. To me, these pattern pieces most resemble what we would call a vest or waistcoat, depending on what part of the world you live in. So I searched there. I looked through McCall's, Butter, Simplicity, and I found a pattern that I feel is appropriate. It is the New Look pattern 6036. This is the pattern that I have decided on. If we look on the inside where they show you what the pattern pieces look like, you will see, I would also like to see what I'm doing. Oh no, I just completely covered up what I was trying to find. These pattern pieces right here, look, that's the front, that's the back. They look startlingly like the pattern pieces that we found in the Historic Costumes book. Very, very easy to take these two pieces and turn them into these two pieces. So, found this pattern. One thing that's great about New Look patterns is they're pretty easy to find at most fabric stores, and you can also get them at Walmart. I'm not going to shame people on where they buy their sewing or crafting supplies, because I grew up in a small town in East Texas, and we had two options, Walmart and Hobby Lobby. Still, those are your options unless you want to go online. No Joann's. I think there was a Hancock's at one point, but all Hancock's are closed at this point anyway. There's also online, of course, but I'm not going to shame anybody for where they get their stuff. If you can find, like I said, Walmart no longer has New Look patterns. They do McCall's, though, in Simplicity, so you can probably find something very, very similar to this. Other great thing about New Look sewing patterns is, like, when I bought this at Joann's, they usually have their MSRP. I think they're like $6, and they're usually like 40% off at Joann's and other fabric stores like that. So I bought this one for about $4. It's fairly cost effective. Same thing about where you're going to buy your fabric. If you don't want to go to fabrics.com or go to these amazing places that have 100% linens and historical type fabrics, go get your fabric where you can, especially if you were just starting out. You don't want to start out your first project to be something that you make out of 100% silk that is beautiful and costs like $50 a yard, and then you screw it up. Start with muslin. Start with quilting cotton. Start with bed sheets. Go to Goodwill, find you a bed sheet. Y'all, I found a 100% linen duvet cover from IKEA at Goodwill for $13, and it is going to be big enough for me to make a full dress out of, because I'm a small person. So find what you can where you can. This is what our ancestors would have done. They would not if they weren't rich. They were rich, that's a different story. My ancestors weren't rich, like I've said before, so here we go. Did my cat? Nah, we'll see, I might have to refilm some stuff. Anyway, now I'm going on to, so I picked up the pattern, and it's great. So with just a few adjustments, these pattern pieces will look like the bodice part of the pattern. So because we are doing, because the skirt pattern for this particular kirtle is basically just rectangles, I'm just going to be using the rest of the fabric that I have chosen to make a simple skirt, no pattern needed. What I'm going to go get now is the fabric. I have returned with fabric. The fabric that I am, now that I have my pattern picked out, I can figure out what fabric I'm going to use. When choosing fabrics, I try to stick with natural fibers like linen, wool, and cotton because those are historical fibers, and they also breathe a lot better than polyester or any kind of other synthetic fabrics. The reason I do that is because they're most historically accurate, and in my opinion, they're the most comfortable to wear. Except, like I was talking about earlier, I live in Texas. Right now, it is about 97 degrees out. There was a time, maybe last week, 2 weeks ago, where we had 3 or 4 days over 100 degrees. It's July in Texas. And even when it gets to like TRF or fair time in Sherwood Forest Fair here in Texas, it might get chilly, it might get cold, but you never know. It might also be 78 degrees outside. So latitude The latitude of Texas and the latitude of Northern Europe is very different. And as much as I want to be accurate, I also want to be comfortable and don't want to get a heat stroke. So I looked through my stash of fabric and I found this 100% cotton flannel. This flannel was given to me by my mother, who bought it at a resale shop. It is about 2 yards and it'll be just about perfect for me to make this outfit, or to make the outer part. The lining, I'm going to use muslin. 100% cotton muslin. I have bukus of muslin. It's what I use for lining most of my historical outfits, and it's also what I use for mock-ups. So when I find muslin on sale, I buy it. I buy it by the yard. So muslin is what I'm using for the lining. I'm a short person, so this roughly 2 yards of fabric will be enough for a bodice and a full skirt for me. So now we're going to go on a historical note about flannel. Flannel type fabrics have been around for centuries, with a suggested origin in early 16th century Wales. And if you remember, we're doing a mid-16th century kirtle. So this was originally made using worsted or corded wool, which is now often made with wool or cotton. What I have is cotton. So since we're making a mid-16th century outfit, I feel that using a early to mid-16th century fabric will work, especially since my mother's maiden name is Jones. A large part of my family comes from Wales. I speak a little bit of Welsh. And when I did my 23andMe, large portion of my DNA comes from that part of the British Isles. So when I can rep some Welsh, I will. This is a tartan. This is a plaid. It's not, it would have been like more of a plain fabric, but again, this is what my mom found and gave to me, so this is what I'm using. And like I was talking about, I live in Texas, not Northern Europe, so lightweight fabrics are better. This is a pretty thin flannel, so this will be perfect for me to wear in the fall and the winter here in Texas, with having a chemise and like a petticoat and some like hose and stockings and stuff underneath, and maybe a cape if it gets a little chilly. So this will be perfect for me for when we head to, probably not going to go to TRF this year just because of Corona, but sometimes, I'm not even going to lie, I just put my outfits on and like wear them around the house. My D&D friends can tell you that. We were talking about it and I said, ooh, let me go get this. And I ran into my room and I put on that purple kirtle I was talking about, and I showed it off to them because these are the people I did theater with back in college, and they knew me. That's what I did, was costumes. And I was like, look, you guys, at my super awesome kirtle. And we were talking about D&D, and I just sat for the rest of the game with a t-shirt and leggings and a kirtle on. No shame. And what I did, no shame in what you do. We all have our thing. Mine is wearing historical clothing and being super geeky. So wool and I aren't friends. I'm naturally hot. I'm a hot nature person. So even during the winter, I very rarely wear wool. If I do, it's a very lightweight wool, and it is lined with cotton or linen, so it does not touch my skin. So gonna use this flannel for this project. Also, if you have a fabric that is not 100% cotton or 100% linen or 100% wool, if it's a blend, if it's a linen rayon blend, if it's a linen cotton blend, if it's all polyester, if this is what you want to make your clothes out of, this is what you make your clothes out of. They're yours, especially if you're just starting out. If you have a microfiber sheet, microfiber is a synthetic fabric, but you have an old microfiber sheet and you want to practice on that, perfect, amazing. Use what you have. Use what you have for your life, your budget, your stress level, your access to materials. If you do not have to give anyone a reason to use what you used, unless you're like in the SEA and they ask you and you're like, well, I couldn't. So, there we go. But, and especially if you use lesser quality and cheaper materials, because, like I said before, you don't want to use this beautiful $50 a yard, 100% silk and mess it up. You want to use the $2 a yard that you found at Goodwill, muslin or sheet that you just piece together, and then you make it and you go, hey, I did a good job. I'm going to keep doing this, and maybe next time I'm going to use that $4 a yard cotton from Joann's or whatever it happens to be. Do it. I'm very lucky. I live in Austin, Texas, if you didn't know. We have a place here. It's called Austin Creative Reuse. They are amazing. It is a resale shop. I will put a link to them in the description, most definitely. They are a resale shop just for craft supplies, fabric, yarn, knitting, of course, other knitting and crochet and hooks, paper crafting if you do origami, if you do scrapbooking. They have paint supplies, they have pins, they have just things to make mixed media. At one point they had just a whole box of corks because people use them for things. So it's an amazing place. They are doing online selling right now during COVID. You cannot go in. They are doing this amazing thing where they are doing fabric selling, and you have to sign up to go to the outdoor fabric sale, which I find amazing. But those signups go quick. Like, I tried to get into one, and it was like 10 people, and it took all of 10 seconds for them to get filled up. So maybe one day I'll get there. But before I go into a huge rant about classism and the fair and the reenactment communities, let's talk about lining fabric. I have a plethora of muslin and plain cotton pieces that I'm going to be using. I already talked about this before, so I'm going to use that. Use what you got. I already have it. I don't have to go out and buy anything else. Let's see. There's evidence that these kirtles would have been boned or lightly boned, and since I would like a little bit more support, again, I have large-ish breasts, I am going to have a little bit of support in there, and I'm going to use bones, except this is what I'm using. 36-inch cable ties. They also come in 18-inch. I got this at a local hardware store. I think it was like Lowe's or something. Why? These approximate baleen or reed exceptionally well. Exceptionally well. And this thing, 36 inches, so 5 cable ties at 36 inches. They're rather hefty. They are, how many centimeters are these? They're 3/8 of an inch. This thing cost me like $4. If you're going to go buy synthetic, you can find synthetic baleen or just like boning and like a roll. It's going to be thinner than this, and it's going to be more expensive than this. So think outside the box. Go to the hardware section. Find things. There you go. So that is what I'm going to use for a little bit of boning. The other things you can use are cording, or you can also just sew your inner lining layers together to create a stiffening effect with the stitches. So my lining layer is actually going to be 2 lining layers. I'm going to create them exactly the same. I'm going to sew the channels for the boning in there, sew a little bit of stiffening in, and then after I do that, I'm going to put this on top and use, I haven't decided if I'm going to make binding or if I'm just going to use bias tape that I already have for finishing the armhole and neck edges. So it'll be a decision that I make later on, but that's what I'm going to do with this. So I want to be able to put this on by myself. That's what that says. Again, I have terrible handwriting. So I am going to, so with ease, so I am going to keep this in mind. I'm deciding where I'm going to put the closures. There is evidence that they had back lace kirtles. That is the most rare of them, especially when putting that on. You generally have to have somebody to help you with that. Side back lacing is also fairly common. That's where you basically have lacing right around the edge area of where your kidneys are. After that, the next most common would be side lacing. I'm going to stand up. You're going to see my Critical Role shirt. If you're a critter, let's stand up. So back lacing, side back lacing, side lacing, which would be like right along here where your ribs are. And then generally the most common that they found is front lacing, so that's front up the front. That's what I'm going to do. It's a spiral laced outfit. The crisscross lacing really hasn't happened yet, so it's going to be a spiral laced outfit. And I have also not decided how I'm going to do the closures. If I am going to make individual eyelets, which I can do, but let me tell you, it's not my most favorite thing to do in the world. You can also use pieces of ribbon on the inside and sew those down and create little gaps that the lacing ribbon will go through. I might do that, or I might use lacing rings. What I actually use for lacing rings, for some reason I don't have them around me right now, I thought I had all of my materials, are actually very, very small. I think they're also like maybe 1/4 of an inch, somewhere between 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch. Key rings, just the split ring key rings. You can also use like a heavy duty, it'd have to be a pretty heavy duty jump ring, or if you can find, even like I said, in the hardware department, very small O-rings. Lacing rings were something that we're using this time, and I find them very easy to put on, and they are also, if I have to adjust it, I can just take those off because they're just sewn to the lining in the inside. I can just cut those pieces and readjust, way easier than having to sew over an eyelet and then redo that. So lacing rings, I'm a big fan of. You can find historical styles, again, on the internet, but like I said, use what you got. I found these, it's like 26 small little, or more, I think maybe it's 50, I can't remember the size that I got. It's like $1.50 at a dollar store. Perfect, amazing. Use what you got, use what's cheap. So, what will I use for the boning? I already talked about this. Let's see. Let's see. So I've got my pattern, I've got my fabric, and my notions. The fabric has been, all of this fabric, I haven't shown you my muslin because I assume people can find what muslin looks like. All of my fabric has been washed and ironed. Extraordinarily important, especially when you are using, hi everybody, I'm Sarah. I'm going to talk to you about fabric. I'm going to talk to you about pre-washing your fabric and pre-ironing your fabric. So you give your pattern, whether you're new to sewing, whether you've been sewing forever, give your fabric the best chance it has. Pre-wash and pre-press your fabric. Thank you for coming to this PSA. Back to your regularly scheduled programming, which is just me going back here and talking in a faster voice. So everything's been washed, it's been ironed, I have everything ready to go. So the next step is for me to make a mock-up. The next step is for me to take this pattern and cut it into a historical looking pattern, which I'm going to film at some point and put up. And then, so I'm going to make a mock-up using mock-up of the bodice using muslin. Like I said, I have lots of pieces. I think I actually have, some of it I actually have a little bit of canvas because I had some random pieces of canvas left over from something. So he said, yeah, sure, I'm going to use that. And then from that mock-up, I'm going to make sure it fits in the bodice. I'm not worried about the skirt because it's just going to be full and pleated. So I'm just going to use whatever's left from this and see what happens with the skirt. And after that, and make sure if the pattern pieces that I cut out of the modern pattern and adjust work, I'm going to cut it out of my outer fabric. And then I am going to put those two pieces together. Then I'm going to take what I have left of this plaid, I'm going to create a skirt, I'm going to attach that to the bodice, I'm going to do the finishing, and then I'm going to put it on and show you guys what it looks like. So, this is me being, like I said before, fairly historical. I am going to use some slightly historical techniques in this. Some of them will not be historical techniques, and by not historical techniques, I mean I'm going to use my modern Singer purchased in 2019 heavy-duty sewing machine, which I know did not exist in the 16th century, but I like it. I generally, when I do historical clothing, long seams and seams that are not going to be seen, I generally sew on the machine. Finishing seams, hems, binding, I'll sew the binding on by machine and then I'll hand tack it down because I like doing the finishing. I'm about to sneeze. Excuse me. I like doing that by hand, mostly because I like to sit in front of the TV and like watch something on Netflix, like Critical Role or Parks and Rec or West Wing or whatever, Witcher, I don't know, whatever happens to be on TV or on Netflix, I'll watch and do the hand sewing. It's kind of a meditative thing, but doing long seams by hand, I commend those who do it. I really, really do. You have a patience that I do not possess, and I feel like I'm pretty patient. But for this, no. I like the fact that I can sew some seams together and have them sewn together in like 15 minutes as opposed to 2 days. Call me spoiled, but I just like it. Sewing machines are great, you guys. So I'll finish off the binding with a hand stitch. I'll finish off the hem with a hand stitch. I'll hand sew on the lacing rings if that's what I like to do. That's what I'm probably going to do. They're my favorite way to do it. They're really sturdy when you sew them in by hand, especially. And so the next next part of the series, I'm going to take you through my slightly chaotic process. I have been called a chaotic sewer before by my friend Donna. She is a professional costumer. She's gone to costume college, and she was also an actor out at Sherwood Forest Fair, and she acts at TRF. She's great. I don't know if she has an Instagram or anything. I wish I could link to her stuff, her socials. But she is very much, she drafts and she sews and she does all this marking. And I'm just kind of like, I don't know, I just made it. And she's like, oh my God, that would drive me crazy. And I'm like, I can't tell you what my process is. It's just it. She's like, you're a chaotic sewer. I was like, yeah, a little bit. So, Donna, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. Have fun watching me go through my chaotic process. Thanks for watching, everybody. It's the first time I've had a script, so if I'm looking down, I got to figure out how to, like, I don't own a teleprompter, and I'm pretty sure my cat can't hold this up for me to read off of, so I'm going to try to figure out if I don't have a lectern or anything, but I'll figure out a way that I'm not like, and this is what you do next, but, you know, there we go. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, first of all, don't forget to love each other, yay, and don't forget, crafting, sewing is for everyone. Crafting and making has no age, it has no gender, it has no sexual orientation, it has no religion, it has no ethnic group. Making things is something people have been doing since people were people. Make things, paint, do clay, macrame, do bookbinding, make paper flowers, do origami, explore this wide and amazing world of crafting. And thank you again for watching this video and this video series, which is lovingly titled Fairly Historical. Fairly Historical, see what I did there? Because like fair, like you go to Renaissance fairs and it's Lee, but it's also Fairly Historical. I like a good pun. I'm going to go finish, well, I say finish this. I'm going to go work on making this pattern match the pattern in here. I'll film that, and I have, what time is it? It is 3 o'clock. I'm playing D&D in 2.5 hours, and by playing I mean I'm DMing, so I gotta go prep for that. I'm gonna see you guys, hopefully, very, very soon.